This one. Here we go. All right. Welcome everyone to the Mixed Plate Podcast, a Plowline production. My dog starts barking in the back. I am your host, Gerry Rosa Tinnell, and today we're going to be talking with Dr. Nina Kim Hanson, who was recently elected for Lake Stevens School Board District 4, located in Snohomish County, Washington. But before we get started, one of the first things I'd like to do is honor the land in which our feet stand. I will begin by acknowledging that those of us who are gathering in the Seattle, Washington area north, we are on the ancestral homelands of the Coast Salish people who have lived in the Salish Sea Basin since time immemorial. We respect this place and honor the sacred spiritual connection to the land, water, and its people, past, present, and future. By acknowledging these lands and their original indigenous inhabitants, we reach back to our own indigenous roots and reflect on the impacts of colonialism and the lands from which all our people come. We are connected to our ancestors through this connection to land, for land is what connects us all. It is also critical to acknowledge that this country would not exist if it wasn't for the free enslaved labor of Black people and the contributions of Chinese railroad workers in helping complete the most important construction project in the mid-19th century. To add to the mix of this acknowledgement that our country has failed to do, I'd like to honor the ancestors of the Filipino Manongs who played a significant role in building the farm workers movement from the 1920s and 30s, organizing alongside Mexican immigrants Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta. It is critical for us to honor the legacy of the African, Asian, Indigenous, and Native diaspora, and the knowledge to care for these lands and the skills to build the America we all share today. So please join me in taking a moment to honor the land of the traditional people in this territory in which you stand. And today I honor the Tulalip tribes and allied bands for their enduring care and protection of this land. And I also honor the life and labor of the Black, Asian, Native, and Indigenous communities by expressing my deepest respect and gratitude. So thank you so much for being with us here today. Dr. Nina Kim Hanson, you are amazing. I mean, I'm looking at your bio, and you are the daughter of Korean immigrants turned US citizens and the great grandchild of the South Korean freedom independence fighters.
Yeah.
Wow. Mom of two multi-ethnic children and a first generation college graduate. And as a mixed race person, you're all about the bridge building and anti-racism. And you have so it looks like you've been in higher ed for over 10 years and student affairs for the first few of those years, specializing in curriculum development and critical pedagogy in the fields of women, gender studies, Asian American studies, and English. So you're kind of like just an all-around badass.
Thank you.
So anyway, congratulations on winning your election.
Thank you. Oh my gosh. Yes, it has
Tell us
been.
about that.
It's been a journey. Well, the election results haven't been, they have to be formalized on the 23rd of November. But yeah, the numbers held up and it's definitely looking like I'm for sure the winner of the elections, but it has been a journey. Like it truly has. When I first started even thinking about it, I don't think I fully grasped the intensity of the campaign season in its totality. And I've learned a lot, and I've learned more about my city a lot in Lake Stevens. And yeah, there's so much. But
I
yeah,
bet. I
yeah,
bet. And
yep.
Lake Stevens, where you live, is it more on the blue or the red side of?
It's it's called, well, silent. It's more what they call the silent majority. So it's a little slightly more leaning blue. Um, but with my particular race, across the board, right, in Snohomish County, we saw voters turn out in less numbers than we originally wanted. But it was a close one this time. It was closer than the primary. So I think more conservatives came out and voted this time than Democrats did, and people kind of moderate in the middle, just a mix, So yeah, was an interesting
Wow.
one this time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I bet. And having to wait until the 23rd of the
Hmm.
month,
Yeah.
that's kind of hard. But looking
Yeah.
at your numbers and everything, it looks like you're leading.
Yes. Yep.
So that's a good thing. And
Yeah.
being Asian American,
Hmm.
living in Snohomish County, and
Yeah.
running for politics.
Yeah.
How was that?
Wow. Goodness, how do I best describe it? As an Asian American growing up in predominantly like white spaces, right? There's always been the question of how do you navigate the systems and the communities around you without assimilating, right?
Mhm.
Um, keeping your whole self, and then at the same time trying to bridge build, and you give so much of yourself while you're doing that. But you're always, for me, I had to really ground myself in who I am, and um, oh, it was quite a journey because on one end, you have to, for me, I had to be genuine to myself, but at the same time, like I'm in relationship with other people and I'm being read in certain ways. And so I had to navigate all the, oh, is she the model minority? Is she going to be the one that just kind of is nice, right? The stereotypes, the nice, that she can't speak English very well. Maybe she's, just those nice Asian girls who, um, to then people kind of actually looking at my bio and actually looking at what I stand for, and, um, just sort of balancing that journey has been a big one. And then also on top of that, just being a mom and trying to take care of two young kids during the campaign season. I can just tell you right now, campaigning in and of itself is is a very privileged space. And what I mean by that is a lot of people who traditionally have run in political atmospheres and spaces have had the money, have had the privileges associated with campaigning, whether that's connections with people, um, and all of that, time and childcare. Even, there's a reason why a lot of moms haven't run for political office in my area. um, and so trying to campaign in the way that is effective, but also true to who I am and my family, um, has felt like a challenge the entire time. Um, and yeah, there were definitely challenging moments of like, wow, can I do this? And it has been the community here that's supported me, that's really like come in and said, okay, we are going to take up this area where you are not able to do right now. Or like other moms who have more privileges in certain areas than I do have sort of stepped up into those spaces where I literally could not. And so that's been a lesson in what allyship looks like across the board. Um, and then also just, I'm a woman of color. And when I choose to take care of my children, it's, in this atmosphere, it's an act of resistance. It's an act of like, hey, I matter and my family matters, right? So yeah, there's definitely been times when I've chosen to take care of my family, my kids in particular, or take care of myself over, let's say, 1 hour of doorbelling. Um, and and I think that I kind of hoped that voters saw that, instead of, oh, she didn't necessarily doorbell on Tuesday, um, you know.
There's like
Although I did doorbell a lot.
Right, right. It sounds like there's a lot of nuances and
Mhm.
intricacies when it comes to this. I mean, especially being an Asian American
Yeah.
mom, right,
Mhm.
running,
Mhm.
because then in our society, we have conditioned ourselves where Well, you're a mom, so you need to take care of your kids. And if you're going to choose to take care of your kids over doorbelling, then you're
Mhm.
not that serious about it,
Right,
right?
right.
I mean, that's
Exactly.
the
Yep.
bias that we've had, for a long time. Even when we
Yeah.
go into organizations and some of our institutions, is that what?
Hmm.
You're pregnant? What about your job? My
Yeah.
job is my job, and my family's my family. But
Yeah.
the things that we have to go through as not the intersections of not
Yes.
just being women but being women of color,
Yes.
because we've got
Yep.
to deal with all of the biases as well too, of you being,
Yeah.
people trying to figure out, is she a model minority, is she going to be
Mm.
submissive, is she going to be quiet, is she really
Yeah.
going to be able to talk for us? that's
Right.
a that's a lot, and I am glad, I am
Yeah.
so happy that you have broken those stereotypes
Yeah.
and just like, fuck you all, I'm going to lead this way, right?
Yeah.
This is what I'm going to do. And,
Yeah, exactly.
and so I know that there was a lot of stuff that you're going through,
Hmm.
just with the amount of racism that
Hmm.
exists over in your, well, all over the place.
Yeah.
But you had to deal with some racism,
Oh yeah.
right?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even pre deciding to run, I hadn't, as a person of color, you just kind of like, okay, you expect some degree of pushback, right? But I knew that there was going to be some racist activity around me. Um, but I mean, things from messages to my personal inbox or text messages on my phone, because I made my cell phone public so that I could connect with our voters here in Lake Stevens. And um, down to weird phone calls to like spam messages and just, um, the stereotype of Asian women being exotic. So I think there was some things around that people sent messages around. So oh, it was it's sad to say that I am used to that behavior because I experienced that for a lot of my life. So it's not to say that I excuse that behavior at all. Um, I just realized that there's a lot of people still that are uncomfortable with difference, right? Whatever in whatever form that comes in. And for me, it came in just a female, you know, bodied Asian American who doesn't fit into the stereotypes that maybe some racist, hold of Asian American women. And so, yeah, I got quite a bit of that. I had to be careful where I went in the daytime and in the evenings. I have other moms who campaign and they could bring their kid around with them, but I just could not because I was genuinely scared that something was going to happen to me while I was in the public space. So I couldn't in good conscience bring my kids out. So that was another sort of layer of challenge that I think women of color understand when they're running for public office. Um, and then, we had to do some security measures just to make sure that no one was going to do anything to our home, um, and all of that. So yeah, there was a fair amount of those things happening. And uh, yeah, yeah.
Well, and here's the thing is that, so I've been watching your moves. Sounds kind of
Mhm.
creepy, I know.
My
But
dance moves.
I've been just kind of following you
Yeah,
on social media, and
yeah.
I love that you're transparent about,
Mhm.
what you've been experiencing
Yeah.
while you're campaigning.
Mhm.
But what really got me was the fact that you kept going back.
Mhm.
You kept getting up in the morning.
Mhm.
You kept leading with love.
Yeah.
Despite all the hate and everything else that was
Mm.
coming in your direction,
Yeah.
you still led with love.
Mhm.
Some people are like, "How did you do that?" And why?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah. I think why, okay, a couple different reasons. One is because I'm a daughter of immigrant parents who came to, like, my parents came in the 70s to a very, very white neighborhood in Minnesota. And not typically, typically the Asian immigration, the waves are, California, Washington, New York City. But my parents, when I was probably in high school or whatnot, my mom especially, she shared with me stories of what she had gone through as a recent immigrant and the things she dealt with her coworkers, her white coworkers who would say all sorts of horrible things to her or do horrible things to her. Um, and she was so adamant about who she was that she wasn't going to let anybody change that for her. And so seeing that, I think just from a young age, like helped me understand that like I still have power. I still have the right to be myself and assert myself. So that's one thing. And then secondly, like, you know, I have two kids that are watching, right? And they're pretty perceptive. They can see, they hear a lot of things. And um, when they see that, oh, mommy's feelings are hurt because something really challenging happened or someone was being very mean or racist towards her, how did I react? And I will be I mean, I have a 6-year-old, she's very attuned to what's going on. And I've sat down and I just talked with her and I said, hey, you know what, Ellie, like this is what happened and this is how I reacted and responded to it. And yes, I responded with love because I see the humanity of other people. And I think that's a big why. And then also, I noticed I've gone the other way in the past where I let the anger and the hurt kind of eat me up on the inside. And I think there's a time and a space for that for sure, where you like feel it and you process it and you let it sort of kind of keep you going, right? There's definitely times and spaces for that. But with this particular campaign run, I decided from the very beginning that I wasn't going to try and give that as much power as the reason for why I was running. So, and my reason has always been like my kids and the kids in my neighborhood and the students that I've talked to, like they are the reason. And so, seeing them play out on the street, during the week, that gave me the extra, okay, you keep going. To my daughter who came back from class and saying, I really like this, but this happened, mommy. How do I talk about that? So that kept me going. I had parents reaching out to me and telling me of like microaggressions that was happening to their kids, the kids of color in the school district. And I was like, the people that are being really loud right now and racist right now, they're not worth me giving up, essentially. So I had to tell myself that over and over and over again. That's not to say I didn't want to give up at times. Like there were definite moments where I was like, oh my gosh, I can't do this anymore. But it was just a constant reminder of who this is for. And then of course my own faith sort of played out in that of like, if if I am who I really am and I say who I really am and I really believe in love, am I going to act that out all the way through no matter what the circumstances are? So essentially, like at the end, even my opponent, we don't agree on a lot of things. um, but I can walk away knowing that I treated him like a human being and I can live with that. And that's what I'm responsible for. And that's the example I want to set for. I have a middle schooler turned high schooler that's worked on my campaign. And I'm showing that to my kids and I'm hoping that there's some good good that comes from that. So it's been very, very hard though, just to be really honest. It's been really, really hard.
Oh,
But
I bet, I mean,
yeah.
and especially it's like I love that, so you're now, well, things will go well, you will get in, and you're
Mhm,
going to be sitting on the school board
mhm,
for Lake Stevens School
mhm,
District, which is
mhm.
awesome.
Yeah.
And it's like hearing on how you speak with your little girl who's 6
Yeah.
about the complexity
Mhm,
of racism and
mhm.
about the feelings that you're having and everything
Yeah.
like that. That kind of tells me that there isn't a child that is too young to have these kinds of
Mhm.
complex conversations.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, it's like,
Absolutely.
a lot of times I feel that um, parents are saying, well, we shouldn't be talking to our kids about race or talking about racism
Mhm.
because they're too young. And it's like, and here's what I think.
Yeah.
For children who were brought up in the white dominant culture,
Mhm.
who didn't have to deal with it, right?
Right.
This entire structure was created for individuals that don't look like you or me.
Mhm.
And so the structures that are in place is to ensure that these individuals will grow up and they will have the privilege, they will have the power to do
Yes.
all of that.
Yes.
For BIPOC individuals, for BIPOC parents, I know growing up with my sons, I needed to have the kind of conversations with my
Yes.
boys on
Yeah.
how do they, what are the things they do when they come in contact
Yes.
with a police officer? How do they
Yep.
behave themselves in public?
Yep.
White parents don't have that conversation with their
Yeah.
kids.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. No, it doesn't happen. It's it's the conversations that my parents had with me um are different in some ways with the conversations that I have with my children who are mixed
Yes.
with, with white as well. And I recognize that they have privilege too when they're interacting with first responders, police officers, my son, he looks more like me, but you can tell he's white as well. And, you know, so my daughter, she definitely, um, we started talking about race and class and gender since she was like 4 because, I mean, even research says, even from 2 years old, kids can tell the difference in race and can name markers of cultural differences. And so if you have the privilege to not do those things, I do think that that contributes, to when I've talked to a lot of white folks who are trying to understand their culture, of feeling like they don't have one, um, or feeling like they have no role in talking about race when that's really not true. So yeah, I mean, my daughter, she'll say, we talk about skin color, what that means, how that's come about, even holidays like what was the most recent one? Halloween, and why we don't dress up in somebody else's culture. Um, because that's disrespectful. And like uh yeah, we've had different conversations, um and it's my hope that, it'll be part of her learning as she goes
Mhm.
to public school.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And
Yeah.
the power of that, right, is
Mhm.
that when you're talking about race,
Mhm.
you're also sharing with her the complexity and the power that she has from being female,
Yeah.
from also being white
Mhm.
or European of European descent,
Mhm.
and being able to navigate between those
Yeah.
two worlds.
Yes.
And it's like you
Yes.
have some amazing ancestors behind you, little girl.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep. That's right.
this is
She
this is
does.
who this is who your great grandparents were,
Yeah.
right? and
Yeah.
and empowering her to see that where
Yeah.
she can love her whole entire self
Yes.
and
Yes.
not be ashamed of part of herself. And
Yeah.
I learned a really critical lesson from
Mhm.
my grandson, he's 12 now, but
Mm,
when I think he was the same age as your daughter. He was
mhm,
6 when I, I was saying some really not too nice things of people
mhm,
of European descent. And, when you're going through the process of decolonization, there is one part of it where um, I didn't know how to stand.
mm,
I didn't know what to say or how to say. I just looked at
yeah.
white people as the enemy.
Mhm,
It wasn't a very, it wasn't a very pleasant time in my
mm,
household because my husband is white as well
yes.
too.
Yeah.
But my grandson, he asked me. He was like, Jima, do you not love part of me because my
Mm,
other Jima is white?
mm,
And I was like, what the hell? What what did you
mm,
say? I mean, he was 6 years old at that time, right? And I
yeah.
I I really had to think about how I was talking with him and how I was talking
Right.
around him.
Right. Right.
That
Yeah.
was important.
Yeah.
Like when we think that our kids are not listening, they are.
Yeah.
And they
Yeah.
pick up on they pick
Yep.
up on those things.
For
And
sure.
so, it's like and I was, I mean, I am a proud indigenous woman. I am proud
Mhm.
of my heritage and of my ancestry and my culture
Yeah.
and my ethnicity.
Yeah.
And so it was when Moana first came out,
Yeah.
and I was like, yeah, representation, right? It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, this is it. And I was like, yeah, that's my people. That's my people. And, they come from warriors and navigators and all of
Mhm.
these things. And so
Yeah.
he's like, yeah, Jima, that's right. That's my people, right? That's my people. And I was
Yeah.
like, that's right. That's your people. And then my husband is like, flipping through the channels and he comes across Vikings and he was like,
Mm.
those are my people.
Mhm.
And then Lyric is like, wait, Papa, if that's your people, is that my people too? And he was like, yeah, that's your people too. But
Yeah.
then yet at the same time, in what I was articulating to
Yeah.
him was, well, the white people are the ones that caused Jima to not be able to live on her lands anymore.
Mm.
The white people are the ones that came and took all of our land and left us,
Mm.
without anything.
Yeah.
Not even thinking about how, as a 6-year-old, he was conceptualizing all of that.
Mm. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Because then it's like,
Yeah.
oh, Nina, I had to stop that shit quick because
Yeah.
there was going to be, he asked me the question if I loved him.
Mm.
He could have turned it out to be where I don't love this part of myself.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
Well, what is that going to do to him growing up as a
Right.
mixed race individual, right? He's
Right.
not going to love part of himself.
Mm.
And I'm like, oh man, I've got to change it. And so that's when I decided that my whole entire dissertation was
Yeah.
going to be on the concept of aloha,
Yes.
of that
Yes.
love and
Yeah.
that grace and that empathy, right?
Yeah.
And so it's
Yeah.
like I needed to find ways to
Mhm.
find the power to empower him.
Yes.
But then
Yeah.
going through my own decolonization, and
Mhm.
it's like, wait, hold on. The biggest colonizers were the Spanish and the Portuguese.
Mhm.
I'm Filipino, Spanish, and Portuguese. So wait,
Yeah.
wait, hold up. I'm the
Yeah.
colonizer and the colonized, right?
Yeah.
So it was
Yeah.
confusing. And I was like, holy
Yes.
cow,
Yep. Yep.
how do I love that part of
Yes.
myself so
Yes.
that way I can find healing in that?
Yes.
So I can find healing for my ancestors.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Oh my word. I can relate to that because I mean I think I told you, but I found out through the DNA testing that I'm also Japanese too.
That's right.
and my Korean family, we descend from people who fought the Japanese when they colonized Korea. And so to know that I have that Japanese ancestry, there are moments when I'm like, oh my gosh, how do I process this? Like, I am living in a body that's both. So how do I how do I process that, And I remember growing up, my grandma, her language was taken from her, her name
Mhm.
was changed on her. She couldn't speak her native language. And so she has some very strong feelings against Japanese to this day. Um, and I understand that, and then at the same time, I'm like, but I'm both. So how do we do that? How are we both, And then that question, I'm sure my daughter and my son will probably deal with it, as they get older too, of I am both, European and Korean and Japanese. And what does that mean for me as a mixed person?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I hear you.
Yeah. I mean, and it's very complex, and
Yeah.
it took a long time, right? It took a
Mhm.
long time for me to process that, right?
Mhm.
To process
Yeah.
the fact, like, in my head, I was like thinking, how did that happen? In
Yes.
my utopian world, it was
Yeah.
like my grandfathers came on shore of the Philippines and saw beautiful women, and the women were like, hello, welcome, and loved each other
Right.
and made great love, and that's how it happened, right? That's what I
Right.
want. That's how I want to think in my
Yeah.
head. But then the
Right.
reality of it, on the
Mhm.
rape and the pillaging and the
Yes.
genocide that has happened,
Yeah.
there's the other part of me that struggles with the fact that, wow,
Mhm.
my ancestors colonized my ancestors.
Right.
My
Right.
ancestors raped and pillaged my ancestors,
Mhm.
right? And not able to tear that apart, but
Mhm.
to find ways of bringing that together. It's like, okay,
Mm.
well, this is what happened and this is where I'm at, and so
Yeah.
how do I move forward? And
Right.
I think that's where the love comes in, right? It's
Right.
just loving our whole selves,
Yeah.
and acknowledging and accepting all of our ancestors,
Mhm. Mhm.
of what they've done, not dismissing what they've done, but
Right.
acknowledging
Right.
that, oh, this
Yeah.
is what has happened.
Yeah. Exactly.
Let's
Exactly.
make sure it doesn't happen
Yes.
again.
Yes. Yes. Exactly. I think that's the big thing, is making sure that it doesn't happen again, and that there, as cheesy as this sounds, right, that there is opportunity to make those necessary changes, from us going forward, right, with our children. And it's going to be messy and it's not going to be clear all the time, but it's necessary, I guess is the right word, necessary.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's like,
Yeah.
that's why you're running for politics, right? That's why you're in a position that could really help make some
Yeah.
systemic changes.
Right.
And so,
Exactly.
it's like,
Yeah.
we need to, and when we find ourselves in those positions of
Hmm.
power, then it's never forgetting
Yes.
where what you've gone through, where
Yeah.
you came from,
Yeah.
and it's like ensuring that, okay, now what is my responsibility?
Right.
What's my
Right.
responsibility to the
Yes.
next generation?
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And that's the whole, I can already sort of feel the tug of like, are you going to now assimilate and be like the system, or are you going to stick to what you said you were going to do, which is, what I want to do, and um make the push for the necessary changes. And um yeah, I mean, I think we talked about this last time, this whole idea of code switching, right? When we're
Hmm.
talking, um, I am so cognizant of that lately. I'm so aware of when it happens. And I'm, I'm almost even more aware when the community that's around me that's BIPOC is seeing that. In their representation, right? In whether it's city council or a school board. And gosh, I think one of my just legitimate fears sometimes is um, giving into that when I know I shouldn't. That's just one of my fears, I guess, and that's just something I've dealt with since I was little. But um, I think I'm confident enough now where it's like I know I'm not going to, but that fear of just being around a majority culture all the time, and there's a mode of survival you go into sometimes, in systems where it's really hard to change or do the do the necessary changes. So I'm thankful that there are, uh, it's not just me, but Vildan Kirby in District 4 that won. She's also a, Turkey uh, woman of color, and she's very, very, very progressive. And so it'll be good to be in that space, not as the only minority, person of color or
Right.
voice in that way. So
Yeah,
yeah.
it's a fine line.
Hmm.
I feel that a lot of us, BIPOC that are
Hmm.
in these positions of
Yeah.
power, where it's like we have to like literally think about how do I ebb and flow in
Right.
between the
Yes.
things that I believe and the
Right.
things that needs to be done.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, I love how you said that.
And it's
Yeah.
it's it's very difficult
Yes.
because in that time, in that moment, it's like if I've got to make a decision where it would seem to other people that I'm upholding white supremacy,
Mm.
it's like there's so many things that could happen in that moment, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
At that moment when someone witnesses what I'm doing or what, the things that I'm talking about,
Mm-hmm.
their stories right there is going to
Yeah.
just be of that singular experience
Yes. Yep.
without
Yep.
knowing, do you realize what I had to go through in order to even
Yeah.
make this decision that you're
Right.
now thinking that I'm upholding white supremacy?
Right. Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes we do, unfortunately, have to assimilate, not just for survival, but
Mm-hmm.
for transformative change,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? It's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I'm going to do this one part to get to the point where I need to have everyone listening to me, and then I need to go ahead and change in that
Mm.
moment.
Mm.
So it's a constant
Yes.
battle of
Yeah.
how are we going to do this without having people that look like us think that we're falling into internalized superiority,
Right. Right.
into upholding white supremacy, into
Right.
internalized oppression, right?
Yes.
It's like
Yeah.
there's all of these nuances that come
Yes.
in,
Yeah.
and I think that's where we need to have that grace
Yeah.
to pause and be able to call people in and ask
Yeah.
questions. Like, it's like I would appreciate it if someone would be like, hey Jerry, so I was in this meeting and I heard you say this, and
Mm-hmm.
this is how it made me feel.
Yes. Yeah.
Right, give them
Yeah.
the opportunity to explain. Like, sometimes you may not know that I have strategies that I've got to do, and
Sure. Yeah.
it may not look like what you think it is.
Right.
Right.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree. I love those conversations because then it takes what seemingly looks like right, just a packaged thing in front of you to wait a second, there's more complexity here, and
Mhm.
there's more to what you're just more than what you're just seeing in front of you. And yeah, I think that's super important. And I think, with the pandemic, right? And people being separated for such a long time, I think we're relearning in
We
some
are.
cases how to connect again and how to communicate again, and not communicate in ways that haven't worked for us before, but relearning what it means to communicate in a more genuine and deeper way. And right now, politics, the political arena is super charged. Like it's the environment is very, very like, I don't know what the right word is, but it's very tense, right? And polarized. And so trying to communicate in that environment is not easy to do. But I think that what you're saying about that step of just taking the time to empathize with somebody else and understand where the other person is actually coming from,
Right.
um, that would really make a difference right now.
Right. And
Yeah.
I think because I've been in so many different
Mhm.
complex conversations,
Yeah.
and it's like knowing what it feels like when
Mhm.
people don't ask me questions, right? People
Mhm.
just make an assumption of
Yeah.
what they heard in that split second.
Right. Right.
I've lost connection with friends and with,
Mhm.
with even family members because
Mhm.
of that.
Mhm.
And it's like, so I just I'm wrapping up my dissertation. uh,
Yeah.
so
Oh
I'm
my
gonna be
gosh.
I'll be defending my dissertation,
Yay.
in fact 30 days from today, so December
Oh my
11th.
goodness. Oh
And
my gosh.
I am so excited,
Yes.
and but there's a the meat of my whole entire dissertation is how we
Mhm.
engage in conversation, and
Yes.
complex conversation.
Yes.
So I
So
took
good.
Aloha and I broke it down acronymically
Yeah.
to because I needed to figure out a way on how to make things right with
Mm.
individuals that I may have harmed by things that I've said,
Mm.
or even acknowledging that what they heard me say, even though it's not what I meant, the intention versus the impact,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
That
Mhm.
it caused them harm. And so
Right.
I needed to find a way. And of course, as you know, your dissertation is a living thing. It is something
Yes.
that you breathe and you become as you're
Yes.
writing the dissertation.
Yes, absolutely. Yep.
So I took Aloha and I broke it down acronymically. And so the A is
Love that.
to ask, right? To ask
Mm.
questions and inquire.
Yeah.
That if you hear something that you may not agree with,
Yes.
have the courage and
Yeah.
the grace to ask questions and
Yes.
inquire. And then
Yes.
if you're going to ask questions and inquire, then listen,
Mm.
right? The
Mhm.
L is to listen. Listen with the
Mhm.
intent to understand, not to
Yes.
judge or to
Yes.
formulate another response.
Exactly. Yep.
And then the O is to observe, because as you
Mm.
ask and you listen, the somatic responses in your body will kick in that you
Yes.
may not want to, you may not understand what is being said,
Yes.
or you may be getting upset. don't
Yeah.
don't ask the question of the other person across of you that you're making me feel this way. Ask
Mm.
yourself, why am I triggered by
Mhm.
this?
Mhm.
Why am I
Yes.
feeling this way, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then the H is heart, to always lead with your heart. And
Yes.
then
Yeah.
the final A is the acceptance and adaptability
Mm.
to just different
Wow.
ways of understanding. And so
Yes.
I feel that, as we navigate these spaces that both
Yes.
you and I are in,
Yeah.
is I wish people would just have the opportunity to,
Yes.
if you want to get to know me, get to know me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't listen to other people who don't know who I am,
Yep. Yep.
who maybe have a small little snippet of my story and
Yes.
made it
Yeah.
so big.
Right. Right. And allowed it to define who you are when it's not. Yeah.
Right,
Yes.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because we have, as women, as Asian American women, as women of color,
Mhm.
there's already a lot of stories out there about us.
Yes. Yep. A lot. Yep.
And
Yep.
it's like, let's work towards dismantling those
Exactly. Yeah.
stories and
Yeah.
restoring the story,
Yes.
right? let's
Exactly.
let's
Yep.
uh let's do that.
Yeah.
It's a crazy world that we live in.
It really, really is. I think that's what's so damaging and harmful is the the assumptions, right, that are not true. And I am so excited for you your dissertation. And, just that is I'm just listening to you talk about aloha, what each letter means. And I think that that is so, it feels like a breath of fresh air. Like it really feels like, okay, it's doable, like you can actually do it and it's reachable, but it's also very genuine and real. And it's like just like you were saying, gestation is like a living document, right? You live into it, and that's something that you can live into your entire life, right?
Right.
And oh gosh, the question is how to do that too for me, right? How to do that. And I'm learning and relearning all the time how to do that in the midst of really, 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 really tense circumstances, right? Like, oh my gosh, how do you do that? Um, yeah, it's a journey. and you
It
learn so
is.
much from it.
It
You
is.
learn
And
so
I think,
much.
yeah, I think it's like you keep inquiring, right? It's like you keep
Yes.
asking
Yeah. The
questions. And then of
questions.
course
Yep.
it's like, if you follow the aloha, it
Hmm.
sometimes it's not always in order.
Right.
Sometimes you ask,
Yes.
listen, observe, and then you listen, and then you ask, and then you just keep going
Yeah.
back and forth. It's hard. Sometimes it's like,
Yes.
especially if it's something that means a lot to us, that's passionate to us, and
Hmm.
we're hearing opposing views. It's
Yes.
difficult sometimes to get to the heart place because I'm still
Right.
not understanding,
Right.
right?
Exactly. Yep.
So
Yep.
it's like, oh, it's
Yeah.
yeah, I'm hoping, I mean, it's like I'm hoping that well, I'm working on turning the dissertation into a book,
I
right?
love
It's
that.
like
Yes.
and I'm hoping that it will help others be able to
Yes.
engage in these complex conversations. That's the only way. I mean, I believe that's the only way that we're going to have any kind of transformative and sustainable
Yes.
change in our
Yes.
society, is if we're able to fucking talk to each other.
Yes. Exactly. Exactly. And really listen and really ask the hard questions,
Yep.
and not just, yeah. Oh gosh. 100%. I would totally buy your book. And I would just, everyone read this.
Yeah, I mean,
Seriously.
it's
Oh my gosh.
yeah, thank you. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, because I feel also, as when you get to a certain point, like, it's like I'm just finishing up my PhD, you
Mhm.
have your PhD. We get to that level where it's like, okay, we have the highest degree.
Mhm.
And I feel that, in the process of obtaining my PhD,
Mhm.
I learned that it wasn't about the letters behind of my name, but the
Mhm.
impact that I would have on society, and what
Yes.
kind of ancestor am I going to be,
Yes.
right? What
Exactly.
am I
Yep.
leaving behind for the next generation? That's what my
Yes.
PhD's for.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Right. In the typical sort of like trajectory of obtaining your degree is like, yes, is to get those three letters after your name. But for us, it's more, there's more depth to that. It has to have a purpose, right? And it has to have like a lasting impact after us too. Um, yeah, absolutely. And that's why I think, just when you said it was a living dissertation, not just a here you go, and then it becomes a little, pamphlet and you stick it, somewhere. Like, no, it has the ability to inform your life for the rest of your life, and your children, and they get to go back and read the book that you're going to write, and they get to share that with their children, and their community and the communities around them.
Yep.
And that's what I love about work written by women of color. It especially in this arena of communicating and relationship, talking with people, making societal change, transformation. Like that, all of it is not just for us, it's for us and what we hope and dream for, Um,
Hmm.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's like, I think, with you know just listening to you talk and sharing your stories,
Mhm.
and it's like, everything that you're doing in your community, that is something that is innate in us,
Mhm.
right? It is about community, it
Yes.
is about family, it is
Yeah.
about values, it's about morals, it's about
Right.
everything that makes us who we are
Yes.
as individuals. It's
Yes.
not about
Yep.
the hierarchy, it's not about the title.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, yeah, I got the title, I got the hierarchy
Mhm.
now, but what am I going to do about this? How am I
Exactly.
going to
Yes.
lift the voices up that's coming behind
Yes.
of me, and open the doors to ensure that it doesn't get closed again?
Exactly. Exactly. Yep, that's exactly it. And that's why at the beginning of my campaign, when I have a wonderful friend who was kind of helping me through the process of starting, right? And they asked me, "Oh, what would you like your campaign sort of tag name to be?" You know how some people are like friends of someone, or people for, or something, something, all these different phrases. And I just thought when I came up with mine, of course, the response in my life in general. It's like, it's too long, right? Like it's too long. I write too much. Um, but it really, specifically chose Nina Kim Hanson for community, because community isn't just a friend group. It's a group of people working through all of the nuances and the challenges and the disagreements and the, to go somewhere, to do
Right.
the good work.
Right.
And then I chose my full name because I wanted people to see this woman isn't just Hanson, right?
Mhm.
Like, but this is a person of color. And so I chose that very intentionally. And it's, it has to be about the community. It has to be about working together to get to what you're dreaming and you're hoping for, especially for your future, right? Especially for your children and what you want there. So, yeah,
Yeah. I
yeah.
mean, it's like that whole, you just talked about dreaming and
Mhm.
hoping and community, and that makes me think of the 5 phases of decolonization,
Yes,
which you
yeah,
just went through in
yeah.
30 seconds. But the 5 phases of decolonization, according to activist and attorney Pokola
Yeah,
Inui of Hawaii, is the
yeah.
first one is rediscovery and
Mhm.
recovery. You did that by actually acknowledging that I need to put Nina
Yes,
Kim Hanson, right?
yes,
It's like
yeah,
you were like, I'm bringing all my ancestors with
yeah,
me.
yeah.
I am not going to put up a facade thinking that I'm Nina Hansen, right?
Right, right, right.
So you did
Exactly.
that. That's rediscovery and recovery. And then the second phase of that is mourning.
Mhm.
The mourning that you completely understand that even though that you are on the school board and you are in a high political place,
Mhm.
that there is still going to be the racism that
Yes.
is going to
Yep.
be, against people of color, and
Yes.
standing for that. And then
Yes.
that's the mourning. The third one is dreaming.
Mhm. Mhm.
You are already dreaming of what you can do for your community, and not
Yes.
just for your
Yes.
community, because what you do for your community is going to impact your family,
Right.
right?
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that's the dreaming part of it,
Yes.
your commitment to change and the
Mhm.
action that you have actually ran for office.
Right. Right.
So you went through the 5 phases of
Yeah.
decolonization, and you're actually modeling
Wow.
what that what that looks like. And
Mm.
so, like I was saying, it's like
Yeah.
I've been watching everything that you've been doing and what
Wow.
you're going through, and you kept coming back.
Yeah.
You kept coming back, and for me,
Yeah.
you really showed what it means to be a woman in
Mm.
power.
Wow.
And but you're not a woman in power where you're stepping on other people to get to where you are.
Mhm.
You're bringing people in and saying, all right, people,
Yes.
let's do this together,
Yes.
because this
Yeah.
is the only way we're going to make change, is
Yes.
by doing it together. So
Yes.
bringing in your
Exactly.
community, that's
Yep.
pretty, in my book, I would say that's pretty badass. So
Thank you. Wow, wow, that really, really touched my heart. Seriously. Like oh my gosh, I'm trying to hold back tears right now because once it starts, it just keeps going. Oh my goodness. Thank you for saying that. That seriously means a lot to me. You think about your ancestry, right? I think about my grandmother. I think about the women before her. I think about my own mom, and it's like, yep, the waterworks are going to start. But it's it's part of who we are. It would be disingenuine, right? It would not be authentic to who we are to operate without the community around us and to bring people with us. It feels super horrible, right? Like just in my heart to go for anything and not bring people with me. It just doesn't feel right. Um, and it's not just that too, but I when I ran, I was looking for where are the other women of color in my city, in my county. Where are we? Because I can't be the only first one in here. Like there's got to be other women, and if there have been other women, gosh, have they felt alone? And what kind of challenges have they gone through? And how can um, this image is from Gloria Anzaldúa from back from my, undergraduate years of reading women's studies, but there's this bridge called My Back, right?
Oh,
And
yes.
yeah, and just like how many shoulders have I unknowingly stepped on already to stand where I'm at? Um, and so it's like acknowledging the people that have come before me, seeing where people are at right now, and then bringing bringing as many people as I can with me who's willing to come with me. And if there are moments and spaces where I'm not doing the right thing, then I will quickly stop. If I need to take 3, 4, 5 steps back and then go again, and um I really think my um just I remember my college professor, my first Asian American college professor, and she was the first person in leadership that I ever saw that looked like me at all, period, right? Um, but she introduced that idea to me in the academic sphere, but it was, she kind of, she took me literally like as part of her family. And that really impacted me. Like even now, I still think about, wait, what was that book that okay, that's right. That, like Hanani K. Trask, actually,
Right.
she introduced her to me at the very beginning. And her, Hanani K. Trask work has been uh, impactful for me too. A lot of Asian American and, Native Hawaiian to Pacific Islander women that have done so much before me, right? And so yeah, it's just they're always in my mind and in my heart, and like, okay, where was that book and where was that word again? Like, it's so impactful, and I want that for our community too, because we're not supposed to live alone, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And you do have powerful women in your
Mhm.
community. I mean, you have Dr. Monica Meadows.
Yes. Yes. I love Dr. Monica. No, she's
Yes,
wonderful. Yeah.
she's absolutely amazing, and
Yes.
I had the
100%. Yep.
opportunity to meet her, and we haven't met in
Yeah.
person yet. Of course, I haven't met you in
Yeah.
person, but it's like we talk all
Yeah.
all the time, and
Good.
I
Good.
mean, it's just you, we need to be able to support one another,
Yes.
and I
Yeah.
think that is so critical.
Yeah.
As women of color, we
Mhm.
have to support each other.
Yes. Yeah.
when we
100%.
have when we have women of color who deliberately and intentionally
Mhm.
uphold white supremacy, no
Mhm.
longer for survival but for power, it hits
Mhm.
differently.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yes.
It hits
Yes.
differently, and it's like, oh, ouch,
Yep.
right? Because
Yep.
then what happens is that we could find ourselves questioning each other, right? Is like
Mhm.
when we have an individual that does something like that, we start
Yeah.
questioning each other on, oh,
Yes.
is this person going to do the same thing to me, or
Right.
what's going on? And
Right.
it's like there's not a whole lot of us,
Yeah.
right? It's like there's not a whole lot of us that is in power, that have these positions. We should
Yeah.
have each other's backs
Yes.
time,
100%.
at
Yep.
all time.
Yep.
And it's just like, it hurts when
Yes.
I meet individuals that is like, oh, it's like, let's go ahead and support the hierarchy. Let's go ahead and
Mm.
support people in power because that's what you want, right? You want power too. And
Mm.
I'm like, yeah, but not like this, not
Yeah.
at the cost of, you know, um, cutting down or
Yes.
hurting another woman of color, or
Exactly. Yeah.
it's like, no,
Yep.
we don't do that to each other.
Yeah.
We don't.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's
And
just gross.
it's super, and you're right, it does hit different, and it's gosh, like if it hits for me in the heart and the mind at the same time, and it's like, oh, like I have a physical reaction to it. Um and it's funny that you mentioned it, because during the campaign season, something did happen to me with regard to that, another woman of color, and I was and it was so here's the thing, here's the weird ironic thing, right? So some of the more progressive allies, white women, were quick to shut that person down, right? And say like, no, like da 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 da, right? But then I had to check a couple of them and talk to them about what's in there that's makes it so quick for you to shut another woman of color down. I need to deal with whatever's going on here, but there's still something over here that doesn't sit right with me too, you know? So yes, I acknowledge that this was really bad and it hurt and um it sucks. I need to find a way to repair with this person because she's still in that journey and I'm still in that journey. And if we can still connect and go on that journey of change and transformation, then I want to do that. But that also is not going to come at a cost of me allying up with someone who has a ton of privilege, right? And attacking that person. I'm like, wait a second, the harm came towards me.
Right.
You as an white ally now attacking the person of color doesn't look good either. Like that, you did back off there. You know, the criticism might be correct, but there's some privilege and power that's still there.
Yes.
So it's a tricky like thing, you know, and I don't know how people in politics do it. I can genuinely say I was not ever planning on running for public office. Like 2 years ago, if you talk to me, you're like, ha, you're funny. Like, no.
I know it is a trip. I live over here in Bothell.
Yeah.
And I have been asked numerous times, will you please just run for council person, or will you please do this? And I'm like, I'm watching my friend Nina over in Lake Stevens. Are you kidding me?
Although, have you watched Han Tran in Bothell?
I haven't.
Oh my word. Oh, it's not, you can totally see Han Tran's social media, and shout out to Han Tran in case Han Tran listens to this. Amazing, incredibly progressive, incredibly anti-racist. But the way that Han navigated the whole campaign system and still speaking truth to power and still like it just every single time she moved and breathed and did anything, I was just like, because it was amazing. And yeah, talk about someone who really just challenges racism and the institution of racism in everything that Han was doing. Gosh, I could totally see you and her kind of on that same wavelength, you know, in terms of like, seriously, because she upset all sorts of people like, who wanted to, you know, maintain not changing. And just yeah, if you get a chance, like just incredible. Incredible.
I'll definitely have to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, you know, you were talking about how when we navigate this, right? It's like it's a woman of color doing something with a woman of color, and then you have white women jumping in to protect you,
right?
But then yet still attacking the woman of color,
right?
I think that was beautiful, because you were like, no, this isn't right either.
Yeah.
Right. Because then you kind of like standing in line with the white women will give other white women the idea and the perception that, oh, it's okay to gang up on a woman.
Exactly.
Of color, right?
Exactly.
And that's something that we don't ever want to do.
Yeah.
And so that's beautiful. And so I hope that you were able to resolve that, or and sometimes it's like, sometimes we also have to think about, is this something that can be resolved?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Because then
so
we're all on our own individual
Yep.
journey, and hopefully down the line, or however it is, because I've come across people where I would try to have some resolution, and it's like, okay, if you're not ready to take that step, you're not ready to take that step.
Right.
But if we ever cross paths again, I
Mhm.
hope we're able to have a conversation.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean,
Exactly.
yeah, though it's so tricky, it is
It is.
absolutely tricky. I like that. I like that word, that
Yeah.
relationships and just the complexities of identity and who we
Yeah,
are in this world is
exactly.
complex. So,
Yes.
but
Yes.
Nina, it has been an hour.
Oh, oh wow. We could go for another
I
3 hours.
know. I know, which we will have to, because I do want to you take your seat in January.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. In the new year. Yep.
So it's like, I want to check back with you probably like in the spring or in the
Okay.
summer,
Yeah.
after, you've been there for a while, and
Yeah.
just kind of like feeling yourself around, and seeing
Yes.
how things are, and
Yes.
checking in. And um
Love
I am actually going to have Dr. Monica listen to this. I'm going to
that.
give
Okay.
her the link
Yeah.
because I want her on my podcast as well
Yes.
too.
Yes. You need to be on this podcast, Dr. Monica Meadows.
Yeah, so I'm actually going to invite her to be part of that.
Awesome.
But
Oh, I want to listen to that too.
yeah,
That'll be good.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely. So thank you again for, for sharing your
of course.
story and
Yeah.
sharing your wisdom with us, and
Thank
just
you.
your power, sharing your power with everyone and with your community, and being a model for your children.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, it's like
Trying.
I mean, right. There are kids, right? They're like,
Yeah.
that's just what mom does, right?
Yeah. She's
Yeah.
just being mom.
She's just being mom. It's normal for them. The things that we do that other people think like, wow, that is amazing. Our kids are like, that's just
Eh.
mom.
Yeah.
Yeah. My boys do that too. It's like, that's just what mom does. That's just her. But anyway, well, thank you so much. And thank you,
Yeah.
everyone, for listening. You have been listening to the Mixed Plate Podcast. Tune in for the next episode. And don't forget to subscribe to the Mixed Plate Podcast, available on all your popular podcast platforms. And a new episode will air every Saturday from now until December 25th. And then we will launch into the new year with new content and more amazing guests. And if you are interested in receiving episodes early in this unedited video format, with member exclusive content, become a Patreon member and supporter of the Mixed Plate Podcast by heading over to patreon.com/Mixed Plate Podcast. So join a conversation by following us on the facebook.com at Mixed Plate Podcast. And this is a Plowline production and is produced with the combined assistance of Jeremy Tennell and Hunter Cronholm. So until our next time to talk story, please take care of yourselves and each other. Aloha, everyone, and a hui ho until we see each other again. Mahalo. Yay!
Yay!